In the heart of Lagos, amidst the buzz of students, traffic, and the endless energy of city life, two young hearts first collided. Michael, a bright and ambitious young man from a respected family, met Ada, a charming and intelligent young woman, during their first year at university. From the very first lecture, Michael found himself captivated by Ada's laughter, her gentle words, and the fire in her eyes whenever she debated passionately in class. Michael was popular, but he never felt truly alive until he spoke with Ada. And Ada, though kind and approachable, was selective with her trust. She was not used to people being sincere with her heart. But Michael was different. His sincerity, combined with a quiet strength, drew her in. Within weeks, they were inseparable, studying together, sharing meals at the campus cafeteria, walking along the palm-lined avenues that crisscrossed the university grounds. By the end of their first semester, it was clear to everyone who watched them that this was not a fleeting campus romance. Friends began to tease them, calling them the perfect couple, and their classmates envied the way they supported one another. Even their lecturers noticed the pair's synergy: Michael, driven and meticulous; Ada, creative and fearless. Together, they were unstoppable. Their love continued to blossom throughout university. Late nights in the library turned into shared meals and whispered dreams of the future. Graduation brought bittersweet emotions: pride at their accomplishments, sadness at leaving behind the university environment that had nurtured them. But their bond only grew stronger. They completed their youth service year side by side, navigating the challenges of living in unfamiliar towns, working long hours, and supporting one another in times of exhaustion. After service, both found employment, Michael at a reputable firm, Ada as a rising consultant in a bank. Their families, who had observed the love, respect, and discipline the pair demonstrated, gave their blessings. Michael's parents, initially cautious, saw the seriousness of their son's commitment. Ada's parents, protective but loving, recognized Michael's genuine heart. Friends and relatives often compare their own relationships to Michael and Ada's, using them as a benchmark of what love could be: loyal, patient, and respectful. For a time, life was bliss. Michael and Ada spoke of marriage, dreaming aloud of a home filled with laughter, and children who would inherit both their intellect and warmth. Yet, it was in these moments of planning for a shared future that the shadow of an old tradition crept into their lives, the tradition of the OSU. The term had never bothered Michael before, not while they were students, not while they were building their dreams together. But when the families became involved in marriage discussions, the truth surfaced. Ada's lineage traced back to the OSU caste, a historically marginalized group, and Michael's parents saw this as an insurmountable barrier. "Michael," his mother said one evening, her voice sharp and heavy with warning, "you cannot marry her. She is OSU. You know the traditions, the expectations. This is not acceptable. It is forbidden." Michael's heart pounded. He had known Ada's background, yes, but he had always believed that the world had moved beyond ancient divisions. "Mother," he replied steadily, "that is something of the past. I do not care. I will marry Ada. She is the one I love, and I will face any consequences. I am her husband, and I will stand by her." His father shook his head, his face pale with frustration. "You cannot go against our ways. If you do this, you will shame this family. You will bring dishonor." Michael did not flinch. "I do not wish to bring shame. I only wish to honor love, loyalty, and justice. If that brings me hardship, so be it. But I will not abandon her. Never." Word spread quickly. Michael's mother traveled to Ada's village, summoning the elders, warning them that her son planned to commit an abominable act by marrying someone of the OSU caste. Michael, unwavering, stood his ground. The elders tried to dissuade him, recounting tradition, invoking social expectations, but Michael would not yield. His love for Ada was stronger than fear, stronger than family pressure, stronger than centuries of custom. The couple faced immense trials. On one occasion, as Michael was traveling to see Ada in her village, a group of men ambushed him, warning him to stay away. They threatened harm, not just to him, but to anyone who helped him. Ada, hearing of the threat, refused to run. Together, they navigated the dangers, moving from town to town, finding safety with friends and distant relatives. Once, during a journey through the countryside, their car broke down in the middle of a storm. Floodwaters rose dangerously along the road, lightning illuminating the vast open plains. Michael held Ada tightly as they waded through mud and water, their clothing soaked, shoes lost to the flood. In that moment, exhaustion and fear pressed heavily on them. Many would have abandoned the dream, but not Michael. He refused to leave her, even as every element seemed to conspire against them. They faced hunger when funds ran low, ridicule from society who whispered that the love of a man of status could not survive with an OSU woman. They were laughed at, mocked, and ostracized, yet their bond only strengthened. They relied on ingenuity, selling crafts, tutoring children, taking temporary jobs, and supported one another through the darkest nights. Michael's family attempted one final intervention. They sent emissaries to bribe him, to promise inheritance, social respect, even positions in the family business, but Michael's heart remained steadfast. He refused, explaining that wealth and privilege meant nothing without integrity, loyalty, and love. Ada, too, faced tests. A medical emergency left her hospitalized far from home, and Michael had no money for the doctors. Yet, through prayer and courage, they managed to pay for her care, strengthening their resolve. Their love was tested not just by society but by life itself. Years of hardship culminated in a decisive moment. The couple, tired of being hunted by disapproval and ridicule, abandoned the trappings of family obligations. They left the city and the scrutiny behind, moving to a remote town where no one knew them. There, they started anew, living modestly, building a home with their own hands, growing crops, raising animals, and surrounding themselves with a community they could trust. In their small sanctuary, they flourished. Their love, which had been tested by tradition, threats, poverty, and danger, became stronger than ever. Friends from the university visited and were inspired by their perseverance. Michael and Ada became known not only for their resilience but for the purity and power of their love. Yet, even as happiness bloomed, the shadows of the past lingered. Word of their sanctuary and successful life spread back to Michael's family. While some began to respect their determination, others whispered that the matter of the OSU lineage was unresolved. Old family members, concerned about societal perception, began to gather information. Michael and Ada sensed the encroaching storm. One evening, as the sun set over their home, Michael held Ada's hands, feeling the years of struggle in their intertwined fingers. "We have survived everything," he said softly. "The threats, the trials, the hatred. But I feel that the final test may be coming." Ada looked at him, her eyes steady and calm, yet shadows of worry crossed her face. "We have faced death, judgment, and despair together. What else can they throw at us that we cannot overcome?" Michael nodded, but his gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the first hints of an approaching storm glinted ominously over the distant mountains. "Whatever comes," he said, voice firm, "we will face it as we always have. Together." And as the village settled into night, a soft wind rustled the palm trees, carrying whispers of the past and shadows of trials yet unseen. The story of Michael and Ada, of love defying tradition, of hearts unwavering in the face of society and danger, was far from over. The lessons of courage, loyalty, and devotion had been learned, but the final chapters, the consequences of confronting centuries of custom, had yet to unfold. The wind carried a warning, the stars shimmered with uncertainty, and the river in the distance reflected the first glimmers of an approaching challenge. Michael and Ada's love had survived storms before, but would it survive the ultimate test? The answer lay ahead, hidden in the folds of time, tradition, and the choices of those who refused to bend. And somewhere, the elders who had once summoned Michael whispered among themselves, plotting their next move. The night settled over the village. The fireflies danced. But in the hearts of Michael and Ada, a quiet fear lingered, because even the strongest love may one day face a storm beyond its power to endure. The dawn came slowly over the small town where Michael and Ada had begun their new life. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and the distant chatter of villagers tending to their farms. Michael stepped outside their modest home, feeling the soft morning light warm his skin. Beside him, Ada held a basket of fresh vegetables she had harvested, her face calm but radiant with the knowledge that they had survived so much already. Yet, even as the sun rose, a sense of unease lingered. Michael could feel it in the way the wind carried whispers from the village, the way the older trees seemed to bend and sway with a quiet warning. Their love had survived family disapproval, ambushes, threats, and life's most brutal tests, but now they sensed that more trials were approaching, not from strangers, but from the shadows of their own past. Days turned into weeks, and the couple continued building a life on their own terms. Their home, though simple, overflowed with warmth. They had begun planting crops that flourished with each passing season, and villagers slowly grew accustomed to their presence. Some even came to respect them, marveling at how two young people had defied social norms and yet thrived through perseverance and faith. Michael and Ada also began teaching at the local school. Michael instructed the older children in arithmetic and English, while Ada taught reading, music, and moral lessons. Their love for each other and their community became a beacon. Children admired their courage, and parents respected their commitment to honesty, hard work, and integrity. It was during one of these teaching sessions that the first real test began. A young man approached the school, a distant relative of Michael's family, who had traveled from the city. He carried a letter sealed with Michael's family crest. When Michael saw it, his heart tightened. Ada noticed his change in expression. "Michael, what is it?" she asked softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. Michael took a deep breath, carefully breaking the seal. The letter contained a summons from his mother and the village elders. They demanded that Michael return to the city immediately. The letter was polite in appearance, but the underlying tone was threatening. It claimed that his continued life with Ada, an OSU woman, was scandalous and could bring disgrace upon the family. Michael's eyes met Ada's. "They're trying again," he said quietly. "They think we can be intimidated, that our love will fail if we face pressure from outside." Ada squeezed his hand. "We have faced worse. We survived floods, ambushes, hunger. We can survive this." But Michael knew this was more than a test of endurance. This was a test of conviction. Returning to the city meant facing the full weight of his family, including threats, bribes, and even social exile. It would have been easier to let go, but he could not. His heart, once again, chose love over fear. Together, they traveled to the city, carrying only essentials, their hands clasped tightly, hearts pounding. On arrival, they were greeted not with warmth, but with the cold, austere gaze of Michael's mother. She stood, draped in fine lace and beads, surrounded by elders and family friends. "You come back," she said, her voice steady but filled with disapproval, "to continue this abomination?" Michael stepped forward, his back straight, voice steady. "Mother, I return because I will not abandon my love. Ada is my wife, and nothing you say or threaten can change that." Ada stood beside him, calm, dignified. "I am not here to fight. I only ask that you respect the life we are building. We will not be intimidated by prejudice." The elders murmured among themselves, and Michael's mother's face darkened. They began to present her arguments, reminders of tradition, the stigma of the OSU caste, and the shame she feared would fall upon the family. One elder, stern and severe, stepped forward. "Michael, you are young and foolish. You risk everything for a woman of a lineage that cannot be honored in this town. Do you not see the danger? The consequences are great." Michael's gaze never wavered. "I see the danger, but I also see the value of loyalty, faith, and love. If tradition cannot allow that, then tradition is wrong. I choose love over fear, integrity over conformity, and courage over obedience to outdated customs." The meeting escalated. Michael's mother attempted bribery, promising inheritance, property, and family prestige if he abandoned Ada. She warned him of being cut off, losing support, and facing social exile. Yet, Michael remained unmoved. He would not forsake Ada, nor would he compromise the life they had built together. Over the following months, Michael and Ada faced life-threatening trials orchestrated by family members. At one point, their modest home in the city was set upon by strangers sent by jealous relatives. Windows were broken, food and clothes destroyed. They barely escaped with their lives, fleeing to a remote village, where only a few trusted friends offered shelter. There were moments when Michael's resolve faltered. Hunger and fatigue pressed heavily upon them. Ada fell ill with a high fever that lasted for days. Michael had no money for proper medical care. Yet, he never wavered in his commitment. He borrowed what he could from sympathetic villagers, sought herbs and natural remedies, and stayed by her side day and night. His heart refused to let her go, even when every hardship screamed for him to abandon their journey. Ada, too, endured trials that would have broken lesser hearts. A flood swept through the village where they had sought refuge, destroying their crops and shelter. They slept under tarpaulins in the mud, food scarce, water polluted. Yet, Ada's faith never wavered. She prayed for guidance, for protection, and for their love to endure. The months of suffering forged them stronger. Their bond, tested by danger, scarcity, and social scorn, grew unbreakable. Where many might have turned, faltered, or given in, Michael and Ada found strength in one another. Love, they realized, was not simply warmth and laughter, it was standing together in the storm, holding hands even when the night seemed endless. Eventually, news of their endurance reached sympathetic elders in Michael's extended family. One by one, relatives who had opposed the relationship began to see the depth of Michael and Ada's love, their courage, and their unyielding integrity. Slowly, bridges were mended. Supporters stepped forward to provide modest homes, resources, and the promise of safety. Michael's mother, too, began to soften. Witnessing the trials her son had endured, the loyalty he showed, and Ada's grace, she could no longer deny the power of their love. One evening, she came to their modest village home, tears in her eyes, hands clasped in prayer. "My son," she said softly, "I see now the strength of your heart. I see Ada's virtue and courage. I was blind, ruled by fear of tradition, and I tried to steer you away. I was wrong. Forgive me." Michael embraced his mother, tears streaming down his face. Ada stood nearby, smiling, her heart full of relief and joy. They had not only survived prejudice and danger but had inspired even the skeptics to recognize the power of love and courage. Years later, Michael and Ada married in a ceremony that combined tradition and modern faith. Elders from both families attended, as well as villagers who had witnessed the trials. The celebration was simple yet filled with joy, music, and dancing. Michael and Ada's love had become legend not just for its endurance, but for the courage it inspired in others. They had children, yes, but more importantly, they had built a life that demonstrated what love truly meant: loyalty, courage, faith, and the willingness to face adversity without turning away. Their story became a benchmark not of perfection, but of resilience, integrity, and unwavering devotion. And though they had faced moments that would have driven many to despair, Michael and Ada had learned that love is not just about comfort and happiness. It is about standing together when the world is against you, fighting for one another when fear presses close, and refusing to surrender to prejudice or circumstance. In the end, Michael and Ada's love prevailed not because it was easy, but because it was chosen every day, against all odds, with hearts committed and spirits unbroken. The village whispered their story for generations, a tale of courage, faith, and the power of standing for love, no matter the cost. The lesson was clear: true love is not found in convenience or approval, it is forged in trials, anchored in faith, and strengthened by unwavering commitment. Michael and Ada had proven that even the heaviest burdens, the darkest nights, and the deepest fears cannot break hearts that are united in purpose and courage. And so, in the small villages and bustling cities, young couples told a story to inspire hope, reminding all who listen that the truest measure of love is not the ease of the path, but the strength to walk it together. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thrilling tales. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, we love hearing from you. And stay tuned for the next chapter of our incredible story.